Hello, welcome to my theater presentation. So I'm basically going to be talking about Khon Masked dance drama, which is a theater tradition from Thailand, and I'm going to be talking about the theatrical and the cultural part of this tradition. Next slide. So the theatrical part is basically this theater tradition doesn't have a certain origin based on Wikipedia, but they say that it's existing since the 14th century. And it existed by the beginning of the Ayutthaya Kingdom, which is the second capital city of Thailand, which existed since the 1350 until 1767. And then in the 1767, this city got destroyed, which had a very huge influence on this theater tradition because they lost a lot of elements and a lot of features. And now they don't genuinely have a lot of things which got destroyed within that city. So basically, this is a theater tradition that's associated with the epic Thai Ramakien, which is basically a retelling story, and it was basically depicted from the Hindu Ramayana, which is also a Hindu epic. So basically, it's a tradition that was performed only in the royal and basically the places of the kings in the tradition. But we're gonna see how this kept evolving. So the characters in this condensed drama tradition they used to be only male characters, and since the 1930s, based on Wikipedia again, that's when they brought in the female characters. That's when women were allowed to act female characters, which were otherwise acted by men. So there are four main characters in this tradition. There are females who are also known as heroines, then there are males who are also known as heroes, then there are monkeys, then we have a very huge and very important warrior and god monkey who is called Hanuman, and then we have the demons, which is basically the king of the devil side. So basically the whole tradition, the whole Ramakien epic goes around the story where good and evil are fighting, as we're going to be exploring throughout the presentation. So the masks and costumes used in this tradition, there's a lot of use of masks. So previously, there was all the characters used to have masks, but the way things evolved, now only monkeys and demons only use masks, and like the females and males do not use that really. So that's like, for example, Hanuman's mask, and then that's the Ram's mask. So these masks are also hideous, and they represent either monstrous beasts or kind of devils, as we're going to be seeing. Like this theater tradition focuses much on the combat and the fighting side of it, more than just being the dance. My performance convention, I chose to focus on the leg and the head movement in this tradition. I chose this specifically because these two body parts are the main body parts within this dance tradition, and they all go in coordination with one and the other. So you cannot move the head without moving the arms, and you cannot move the legs without moving the head. They move in coordination with each other. And the second reason I specifically chose leg and head movement is because it gives me a broader opportunity to explore a wider kind of range within this tradition, whereby the legs are focused by the male characters, and then the head is emphasized by the female characters. So it gives me a chance to explore both female and male characters within this tradition. So the legs, for the legs, there are three specific movements, and these three movements, you have to sustain them throughout the whole performance. Like I said, they're emphasized by men. You'll find that in some performances, female won't really care much about this, but for males, it's a tradition. So basically, this is how they should stand. So the knees should be out, and the legs should come in. So basically, this is the positioning of the male character's legs, and they have to move like this all the time. So when I bring my knees close together, I represent another female character instead of representing a male character. So even if I stay like this, I have to keep lifting my legs, but they still have to keep this 90% angle. Then the head, which is emphasized by the females, is basically being tilted to the left and right throughout the whole presentation, gently, based on the theater tradition. Next slide. So section B, my theater process, the practical research and approaches to this application. So like I said, these are some of the photos that are showing the leg movement. So next slide shows me when I was trying to actually get into these positions, and I was imagining, so you can see that all the times I have this position, and even if I lift, but I still have a male representation of the male character of Khon. So practicing my performance convention, while I was practicing this performance convention, these are some of the challenges I faced. Number one was body balance. So like you said, they lift legs a lot of times. So it was really hard for me to maintain this position throughout the whole dance because it really requires too much energy for the other leg that's at the bottom. And then on beat steps by leg. So the entire performance takes place and the dancers on stage do not say any word throughout the performance, but except there's some musicians besides who are playing music and drums and everything, and the dancers have to be on beat. So once you ruin it, it's really clear that you've ruined the whole performance. So that means I needed too much time to focus on beat movements and everything like this. So how did I practice this performance? Is that basically I watched a lot of online Khon videos, then I tried to mimic their moves, which was really difficult because this is a completely new route that I had taken compared to other performances that I've done, as I'm going to be talking about this through section B. Then many articles, I also read a lot of articles, I read a lot of reflections about dance performers, and I learned a lot from the Thailand schools that teach, which is rare, that teach about this Khon Masked dance performance. I also learned a lot the meaning of different moves and gestures because this specifically gives me the chance, which I'll be explaining in section D, that unless you understand fully the culture of this performance, you won't really produce something out of it. So how and why did I incorporate my performance convention within my theater moment? Is basically that for the legs, I used epic like leg movements. So basically I was in a warrior kind of fighting way, like we're gonna be seeing in my moment, to perform both Fraram and Monkey Hanuman, as I'll be telling you in the section C. And then my head will be always tilted while I'll be performing the king's wife Nang Sida while she's coming back from where she's been basically kidnapped. I'll be portraying this in my moment in a while. Why did I choose this? Because it makes the entire scene more intense, because it's basically supposed to be an intense scene whereby basically there's a war going on and there's all these things happening, and it portrays the gentleness and the joy and everything that this theater tradition has been transformed to present. So this is my theater moment, and I'm gonna be explaining it before I perform it. So basically, I'm gonna be performing 3 roles, which are 2 male roles and 1 female role. The 2 male roles is King Fraram, who's basically the king of the good kingship, and then the second one is the king is Monkey and the warrior god Hanuman, who is basically the greatest advisor to this King Fraram. And then I'll be portraying the king's wife, woman Nang Sida, who is basically, and this all is from the good side of the kingship. Then I'm going to tell you, the story goes like this. You have to, this is the entire, so I depicted this story from the tradition itself, whereby basically there's a demon king from the demon kingdom called Totsakan, and then he kidnaps the king's wife, and then the king with his greatest monkey advisor, Hanuman, they go to rescue the wife and they bring her back home. So that's going to be the entire story. I'll start with King Fraram, and then I'll go to Hanuman, Monkey Hanuman, and then I'll end by portraying how actually Nang Sida comes back home after they rescue her. So they kill Totsakan to rescue the wife, but the death of Totsakan is not portrayed on stage because they basically said that this is a misfortune as per Gailey eBooks research. So I'll start by portraying Fraram, King Fraram. Then I'm going to basically act like Monkey Hanuman, who is they're both on war going to rescue their wife. So this is Hanuman, who's gonna be really more fast and more from this. portraying the wife when they get her and then she comes back home, right? Good. So basically, like you saw the entire story, the wife comes back home, she gentle and chill, and she's so happy because they've rescued her. And if you saw, Monkey Hangman was so fast and more violent, but then because the king wasn't like that, because he's meant to be calm and to be, the king. Okay, then my section D, I'm going to be talking about my learning, both as a learner and then as a performer. As a learner, I learned two main things. One is the culture aspect, such as historical gender imbalance that existed in the traditional Thailand and in the Southeast Asian area in general and in other most places. So basically, you can see, like I said before, women weren't allowed to act in this tradition, but then like time passed, then they brought in women. And then I compare this to our play that we did, Mother Courage and Heart Should Ray, because that's a play that shows the different sides completely irrelevant from this, because basically they show this Mother Courage herself as this woman who's really at the top, which is completely different from this learning within this condensed drama tradition. And then the location influence on theater production. So basically, I also, while I was going through Khon Masked drama, I kept reflecting about when you bring the same tradition and then you perform it in my country where we had genocide, and people would actually really feel different. Like the entire production and the entire story would get lost because people's hearts are still haunted by what happened. So if you bring this production in my context, it would change meaning. So I learned how actually the location where we as practitioners perform changes completely the meaning. And then as a performer, I learned a lot about the challenges of my body language and positioning and feelings expression. And then I learned about the character and my actual persona. So these two things is basically in all the plays I did, in my CPP, in Mother Courage, and all other performances that I had done before. I linked all the performances to my actual persona, being funny, being, this outstanding and whatever. But then I couldn't do this in this dance tradition because it has its specific routine that's fixedly linked to the Thailand culture, and I could not bring myself in, which was really difficult. And then I learned that there's too much time to rehearse again because of different culture. And then I learned that, like I said, for a topic from a different culture, one needs to fully understand the culture in and out before you actually start working on the performance from that culture. Then I'm going to be comparing my performance convention, which is the legs and the head in Khon, and Lakon, which is also from Thailand. Lakon portrays the same thing like Gelly ebooks say. They portray the same things Ramakian epic, but they don't focus on that. They portray also folk tales and Jataka story. The comparison is I have similarities. Next slide. Similarities, and then I have differences. So the similarities is that both of them, they raise the leg backward and forward while they're dancing. And then the female characters move their heads gently, and they all focus on the head and the legs. So the difference is that for the legs and movement, Khon focuses more on dance and movement, while Lakon focuses more on the hand gestures. And then the head is that it's not too much tilted within Khon like it is in Lakon. And then for the legs are basically more bent in Lakon more than in Khon more than in Lakon. And then the legs also move in a very faster way in Khon more than in Lakon. Thank you so much for listening.